hope you understand. It's nice to meet everyone. I am Professor Dustie Spencer. I am a visiting assistant professor at Tucson, but I'll probably be around for a while because I really like my job and I like Tucson a lot. So it's nice to meet everyone. So I teach global studies, which is kind of like the jack of all trades of social studies. And part of what we do in global studies is we look at multiple layers and multiple disciplines for solving big world problems. So a lot of my students are really globally minded. They want to get jobs in like international organizations, or they want to get jobs in local businesses, or they want to start their own businesses. So that's why the key theme here was like, sustainable business for future leaders. So initially it was geared towards undergraduates, but I know that we're all ages here, but presumably we're all future leaders. So, and that's a big responsibility because we have to think about not just the bottom line and profits, but also how we're going to improve the world and make it better than we found it. So there's a lot of background around development, and I'm really going to give you like a very tiny Sparks Notes version of this because we don't have that much time, and I'm sure we want to get on to networking. So basically, development and sustainable development is based around, we need other indicators besides profit margins, besides GDP, and per capita income. And the things that we're looking at now are Human Development Index indicators. So we're looking at how happy people can be, how long they live. I can tell you right now, I'm American, and we are unhappy. We might have wealth, but we're not happy. And income inequality, of course, is a huge problem in America as much as it is here. We all know Squid Games became very popular to demonstrate the vast income inequalities. So these are part of the UN Millennial Goals, which predated the more popular SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals. And basically, it's about growing. If we're talking about in terms of sustainable development, it's about growing a green economy, and it's about eradicating poverty at the same time. So there's a lot of different interconnected levels in sustainable development. And that's why we look at all these different ideas. We want to eradicate poverty, or at least want to reduce poverty. We want to, provide peace and justice for people. We want decent working and economic growth as well. And we also want sustainable cities. We want to grow in such a way that, and this is, yes, you can quote me on this, sustainable development asks simple question, can we advance economically and technologically without screwing up the planet in the process? So that's basically the core of sustainable development. It's development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. There's a lot of different models here. If you're super interested, you can have the slides, and there's lots of references. I do not have time to go over all those items. So just different kind of models. If we're talking about sustainable development in terms of local or global, or many of you probably heard of global, right? It's a very trendy kind of term, global growth. Basically, we understand that there isn't really one particular solution that's going to work across boards. But there's strategies that we can deal with different concerns and variables that have to be fully understood in a particular context. So we can't extrapolate one development idea here in Korea that we think is going to work in another development context. For example, we can't think about building lots and lots of urban development when there's an aging population and a very low fertility rate. So we need to think about other kinds of things if we're investing in Korea. And same thing if we're looking at investments in lesser developed countries or developing countries, which is a huge booming market because they are producing more children, and so that is definitely a good market to look into. So getting a little bit into climate change and how that impacts sustainability of business. You might have heard of COP26. It was a UN climate change conference, and it was in Glasgow. I graduated actually with my PhD in the University of Edinburgh, so I'm very fond of Scotland. And they've done really great at having renewable energy. Most of energy in Scotland is actually renewable energy, so they've done a really great job. And a lot of European development has been able to they've been able to develop in such a manner that they've also been able to reduce carbon emissions. So these things really aren't incompatible with one another. So now getting on to sustainability in business. I have a chart here. You might have heard of some of these items. You've probably heard of ESGs, right? Environmental, social, and governance. So among a lot of respondents in C-suite, so CEOs and CMOs, CFOs, have agreed that sustainability is really important for long-term value creation in business. So it's using sustainable materials, optimizing supply chains to reduce emissions, etc., focusing on renewable energy sources, and even sponsoring education funds for local communities. Again, these things are great if you're working in, if you're concentrating more in lesser developed countries, perhaps, or lesser developed contexts, to promote growth as well as well-being. So ethically, it's important in business to think about the effect business has on the environment and also the effect that business has on society itself. So ESGs, you've probably heard a lot of indicators. A lot of businesses would use ESG indicators, and basically companies with higher ratings for ESG performance enjoy average operating margins 3.7 times higher than those with lower ESG performance. So again, and shareholders are getting higher annual returns. Companies with ESG ratings have lower cost of debt and equity. Basically, it's good for everyone. It's a win-win situation. So why not do it? The other reason why you should do it is because if you don't, we're not going to have a planet. We have a very big problem that probably you're aware of. And I think even teaching now, I wasn't even really understanding fully how pressing global warming is until I started teaching global studies myself. Basically, the Paris Agreement outlined back in 2015 that developing economies are going to try to keep carbon emissions low so that the global warming doesn't increase to more than 2 degrees Celsius. But we're kind of already there. So we're really close to being there. And basically, we need to think about not just combating climate change or reducing emissions, but we need to think about damage control. We need to think about what we're going to do and how we're going to respond. Busan is actually really well situated for responding to this crisis. How many of you heard of the floating city project? There's like a floating city project that's going to be out right outside Busan. Really cool stuff. And Busan's I think it's a great area that really focused on sustainable growth and sustainable industries and reducing emissions. Redevelopment for green infrastructure, this kind of thing, which is going to be super important for developing countries as well as developed countries, because these tipping points are already here. 9 out of 15 of the global tipping points, such as the melting of the permafrost, which releases methane, which expedites the global warming, the release of global greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, which kind of causes a cascade effect. So you have places like India reaching temperatures now in parts of India that would literally boil a person. And you have a big issue of climate migration. So there are whole island nations like the Maldives that will theoretically be underwater in 20 years. So floating cities are a really big deal. And these kinds of very inventive activities are going to be super important. So how can we develop for the present without compromising our future? I've been to Singapore and you saw those lovely big trees. They have like a whole ecosystem in there. So even though it's a big sprawling urban environment, they have integrated these very green spaces. And I thought it'd be really cool to make like apartment buildings or something, like integrating this. And I really hope that these are things that we can see in the future, the very near future, because we really need it. So solutions now for sustainability in business. Long-term investment strategies are the solution. We need to think about these things. Quarterly statements, I think, are fantastic. The Unilever CEO is actually, there was a really good blog that he wrote saying how he did away with quarterly statements. The focus now has to be on long-term strategy and investment. And maybe stakeholders initially, shareholders were like, this doesn't sound like a great idea. But actually, there really is no trade-off between sustainability and profitable growth. So actually, the sustainable endeavors and sustainable products and investments in Unilever are doing much better than the other types of products. So like one of the examples that was given was a washing powder that requires very little water to use. That's great for us in the developed world, but also that's really important for lesser developed countries where they don't have access to clean water. Not everybody has access to clean water, and women often have to go very long distances to get clean water. So you are really impacting not just the environment that way, but impacting and really improving people's lives and driving a profit for yourself and your shareholders. So it's basically a win-win. COVID, that led us to kind of rethink how we do business as well. We can think about less waste, being more local, having more opportunities to promote a circular economy and being more agile. We don't always have to, all of us jump in our cars, get into our office by 9 o'clock in the morning, causing lots of traffic jams. We can do Zoom sessions. We know this, we can do that. We can have staggered working conditions. We don't have to all be in work at the same time and work 12 hours a day. And we can be quite productive making our own schedules while we're balancing trying to teach our kids at home because they can't go to school because there's a pandemic, etc. So we've learned to live, we can learn to adapt to this, so we can learn to adapt and try to really use some of those lessons in our future businesses. So of your own business, and I didn't make these up, these are, again, other things that I found. Lead, don't follow, but always learn. Always learn. I think that's given. Everybody knows. That's why one of the reasons we're here, we're networking with each other. We're learning from one another. And looking at, metadata for the future, which brings, mega opportunities. I know Jim Count is, he does like lots of metadata on marketing strategies, which is really important. And really thinking about your future market, not just the market now. So green infrastructure and transparent practices are very important for driving profitability, as well as staying above board and being transparent. And the idea here is not to do greenwashing. Are you familiar with greenwashing? Greenwashing is like the practice where you kind of like say I gave like a nickel or something to like somebody who gets impoverished or something, and you claim to be this a very woke kind of individual or corporate entity. Basically, the idea is that you deliver your promises for sustainability, and including minorities is very important, including gender parity. On average, companies that boosted the share of female partners by 10% also increased revenues by 10%. Again, companies that did not have diverse leadership teams are more likely to underperform than their counterparts. So basically, all of those sustainable development goals, inclusion of minorities, inclusion of women, and working on making the future a great place environmentally, all of these things come together and provide not only happiness and well-being for more and more people, but providing for a sustainable planet. So we can reimagine our future with lots of different types of technology and lots of different sustainable outcomes that can produce very great profit as well as outcomes for us. But also taking into consideration how what we're doing might impact other people. This is a key idea, like turbines take a lot of space, or clean fuel may take up the space of other crops. So these are things that, again, we need really incredible thought leaders and blue sky thinking to consider how we can provide, and not just jump on like the bandwagon of like mining for cobalt, so we're powering our laptops and everything, and really trying to figure out how we can do this again with a conscious mind for saving the planet and people that inhabit the planet. So, summary, looking at the future, act locally, think locally, protect people and nature, looking at the interconnection of all systems, social, political, economical, and transforming your businesses. So climate change is forcing us to transition to sustainable models of development. So this, I'll end it with here. I might do another topic, another time frames analysis. I was asked if I could talk a little bit about that because I do a lot of frames analysis for political and social movement analysis, but I thought that that would be enough for me talking because I am a lecturer full-time and I could probably go for another couple hours, but I'm going to end it pretty much here. I do recommend this TED Talk, How Great Leaders Inspire Action by Simon Sinek. I think some of you posted in the board. It's really great. I really recommend having a check out this. Again, if you want these slides or any of the links, I'm happy to share those with you. And again, some more UN-related SDG training sources. Unitar SQL Jeju is actually really great resource. They have different trainings, and a lot of them are free that you can just sign up for online, or you can just go to Jeju because it's pretty nice, right? So go to Jeju and hang out with the UN people and learn a little bit more about sustainability. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope to meet some of you one-on-one.